Alright, so today we're going to hear from NC. He and I went to school together at Case with Robin, and since then, after getting his 2 degrees, he went on to lots of exciting things. So he's going to talk about his experiences, successes, failures, tough times, good times. I encourage you all to ask him questions as they come up. And yeah, I'll leave it to you.
Cool, thanks so much, man. Alright, yeah, so my name is NC. Full name is NC Kakabasi. I went to Zacuto. Listeners call me NC. The thing I tell people is that you practice saying my name, it will improve your IQ, and I sincerely believe that. Imagine like being like 4 years old, 3 years old, learning NC Kakabasi, go to Zacuto. You learn to speak pretty well very early. So anyway, as Dave said, I went off to school with him at Case Western Missouri University in Cleveland, Ohio. Graduated with a mechanical and electrical engineering degree. I went off and got a master's in mechanical engineering and in business, more so management, engineering management, what they call it. Then I went off to General Electric, started a company after that. Didn't do too hot, so started another company, sold that, and then moved to New York City to become an engineer at a law firm. And I can go into depth about that if you have some questions about it. And then after that, I left that because it sucked. It was terrible. All joking aside, it was a cool job. Got to see a lot of different things, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But overall, lifestyle-wise, it wasn't the most fun thing. Lifestyle-wise, that's a key thing. After that, I traveled for a little bit, did some consulting with some different startups. Started a little bit of something of my own, and then ended up starting another company with a friend where I work now. It's called AlleyNYC. We're a tech incubator, tech co-working space in Midtown. We have about 323 members. We started about 10 months ago with 5 people. We now have 323 people. We have 110 different companies in our space, and they all work on different types of things. Like we have a group that's just started in our space today that is working on NASA's Grand Challenge. And the idea there is that this Grand Challenge is that NASA in the next 5 years wants to send a ship out to the nearest asteroid, grab that asteroid, and bring that asteroid to the moon's orbit. And this group started their team at what we call a hackathon in our space. Every single weekend we have a different hackathon. So NASA partnered up with us to do a hackathon, and this team came out of it, and now the team is working in our space. We've been out to Houston, we've been out to DC a couple of times, and they're working on prototyping some devices that will be used on that ship. So that's sort of like the fast Cliff Notes version of who I am from my college to now. Next thing I just kind of want to say is that one of the biggest lessons I've learned, and this will kind of dictate everything else I talk about, but one of the biggest lessons I've learned over the last 10 or 28 years, I guess, I'm 28 now. One of the biggest lessons I've learned over the last 28 years is that you can't be afraid of failing. You have to try as many different things as possible. I treat life as an experiment. I apply a scientific method to pretty much everything that I do. I run different tests and different things. I run different tests for myself and the endeavors I get into to assess like what's the best path for me, but also to identify my limits. And this is something I've done as a very young kid, largely because my dad is a crazy man. And I've continued to do it largely because as much as you guys don't want to, you'll become your parents to some degree. And I became my dad, a crazy guy. That's because he's a good dad. So early on I wanted to become an engineer. Very early age I wanted to be an engineer. So I would take things apart in my apartment, the home that we lived in. I would destroy a lot of the things we owned. I got Sega Genesis and I didn't play it. I took it apart, which is a terrible thing, so I wish I played Mortal Kombat a little bit more often, and Sonic the Hedgehog and all that. Got computers, took those apart, put them back together. Ended up building my first robot when I was 11. And in high school, built a large robot called E-Prob. It was about 300 pounds. I was able to flip dumpsters. We took it out to Comedy Central's BattleBot competition, which was in San Francisco. Competed that, destroyed some robots, and then ended up getting destroyed ourselves. It was a sad, sad day for us because we spent about a year or so working on it. We spent a lot of money for high school kids at least to work on it. Yeah, so now I work on, now basically from that to now, I'm no longer really working on engineering, but I apply a lot of the skill sets that I've accumulated over those years on this. And the principle is still the same, that I'm experimenting, trying different things. Every single day I fail at something, or a company around me fails at something, and we use our cumulative experience to sort of push forward and work on something new and make some advances. So with that, I'll open up to questions. question. I can dig a little bit deeper on these things as well.
What was your first startup?
What was the first one?
Yeah.
So the first startup was, well, I said two ways. So the first company I started was, well, first entrepreneurial thing was I sold CDs in high school. That led to all the other businesses I ever got into. I used to burn mixtapes, and I'd fill my backpack up. I was a bit of a nerd in high school. I'm just gonna say that right now. I was a bit of a nerd. I'm still a nerd now, but I'm like a nerd in disguise, if you will. If you ask me like a Star Trek question, I can probably answer it. Ask me like a Star Wars question, probably answer it. But in high school, I got my homework done very quickly, and I would spend my nights burning CDs. And then I would distribute those CDs at school, sell them for maybe $10, $12. A lot of times they were music that wasn't out yet, it just came out, because I would download all over my computer, spend over the entire weekend downloading them, and sell them. And from that I learned about scale, and I used that to apply to the first startup we started, which was called Mobile Discovery. The idea there was that we wanted to create a better way for offline media to connect to online media. So things like billboards, things like magazines. We want to find media, advertisers want to find ways to connect those magazines to what you see on your phone. Largely because when you go to a website, for instance, you can track how many people have visited that website based upon the clicks that they, just by going to the website, that's like one hit on the website. And whoever's managing the website, on their side, they have a dashboard, they can see the number of people who visit that site. If you have an ad on that site, if you have a particular link, if you click on it, that's an indicator of interest. And that tells the administrator of the site that this link or this ad is a good link, it's captivating people. This one has 500 clicks, this one has 10 clicks, let's get rid of the 10 click ones, get more of the 500 clicks, and let's try to sell that asset. So that's all online though, but we don't live online. Like we live out in the real world, we do real things, we touch things, we see things around us. So there needed to be a way to track how successful those things were. And that's what we worked on. We've worked on ways to track the activity billboards had, like how oftentimes do people actually look at it? How many times do they interact with it? How many times do they touch a device or touch a billboard? And what we did to do that is we outfitted phones with NFC devices. We worked on QR codes. You guys know what QR codes are? So the kernel of the idea was that one of my partners, he went out to Japan and he saw QR codes all over this place, all over Tokyo, and he wanted to basically bring that here to the States. So we would apply QR codes to magazines, we would apply QR codes to ads that you see on billboards, and we did this about 5-6 years ago before it was really prevalent. And still not prevalent because QR codes, to be frank, suck. No one really uses them. If you use them, I don't know what kind of life decision you're making. You should just type in the URL. But we found most people just type in the URL. And we ended up, sort of expanding our platform to include QR codes. We create campaigns around it. We teach advertisers. We taught GQ, or Condé Nast, which is a company that owns GQ and Vogue and some other things. Not Vogue, they own a couple other things like that. We taught the marketing divisions of those groups how to create campaigns to encourage people to scan the QR code or to type in a phone number and text it to another phone number. If you've ever gone to a basketball game or a baseball game, sometimes during the halftime or during the timeouts, they'll have something on the prompt that says text 232 to win something. I don't know how to do that. Right. So that's a problem with them. They should better explain it. And that's what we spent a lot of time working on. We created the tech behind that, and then we also created campaigns and instructions for whoever licensed it from us. So we would work with I guess the last client we had was National Stadium in DC, it's a baseball stadium, or baseball team, whatever. And we had NFC podiums around the space. If you had an NFC enabled telephone, you tap it, and you'd be entered into a raffle, and you'd also receive some sort of ad, a particular ad. The next iteration of that was text. I think it was like 323. Excuse me, it was text 202. That's the zip, the area code in DC. Text 202 to some number, and you'd be entered into a raffle. So we helped them set up that application, also trained them, and also created a marketing campaign on that. So that was a cool business. It was all right. Didn't do too so hot. They entered zombie zone. Startups, they have like death, they have zombie zone, and then they have success. Death is obviously where it falls apart, people leave, you don't have the money. Zombie zone, well, success is, You grow, you get more money, you add more people, you get a bigger office. Zombie zone means you're not making enough money to get anybody else to join the team because no one's crazy enough to join the team. But you're not losing any money either. So you're just sort of limping around. And that's where we were. And largely because people didn't really care about QR codes and the market was feeling a particular way about mobile tech and also innovating in that way. It was 2008 recession time. People wanted to miss it. But it was a great experience though. We learned a tremendous amount. And my experiences from that point after, because I put all my money into it, when it did start to fail, I reached that point where, like I said, like everything in my life is about experimenting. And I would suggest to you guys, it should be about experimenting, trying different things out. As engineers, as scientists, you're equipped with a skill set that very few people really take advantage of. And that's like trying things, seeing what works and seeing what doesn't, and then making a better move. So I started that company, it failed, I was homeless for about a month, lived out of my car for that month, and then started another company out of it. And that was, going from the very bottom and then going all the way back to the top again. I ended up selling the second company. Going back to the top was a pretty damn good experience. You learn a lot about yourself and about people around you. What's up?
Yeah. What
Jersey,
did you,
right?
What?
Jersey?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you do at the law firm? You said you were a mechanical engineer in a law firm?
Yeah, I was engineer at a law firm. So, so there's this concept called intellectual property. When you come up with an idea, come up with a product, you want to try to find some way to protect it, especially if you feel like it's going to be valuable. A primary example of that is like Thomas Edison or Nikola Tesla. Thomas Edison was a huge patent advocate. So whenever he came up with an idea, he would patent it. And I think most of his patents have since expired, but a lot of the things that he came up with in those early stages, he created a monopoly around them so other people couldn't do what he was doing, so he can sort of corner the market. The general idea is extended today where you invent something, you want to protect it so that if somebody else creates it, you can keep them from creating it so you can build your own business and that you have that competitive advantage, or so that you can license it out, allow companies to license it out. So basically, what I did at the law firm was crazy people who had money. I don't mean crazy people like crazy smart, crazy like eccentric folks, people who work at like MIT, who work in like Princeton's Plasma Lab, people who are working at Caltech, working on different robotics projects. When they come up with something innovative and they think that there's a market for it, that they can sell it, they would come to our office and we would talk about how we could patent it. The last big project that I worked on was a seaweed anchor project where this gentleman, he has an office in Brooklyn Yard, Brooklyn now. He created mechanical seaweed that would sit in the bed of an ocean floor and would camouflage with the rest of the seaweed. And basically, when you envision seaweed on the floor, it's undulating back and forth. His device harnessed energy based upon moving back and forth. Taking that simple device, putting it in the ground as it undulated back and forth, much like a windmill, would harness the movement of the water around him. So we created about 15 patents around that. One very broad one to protect the overall idea, and then one very rudimentary, very basic. So basic that if somebody came up with anything close to it, he would be entitled to sue or tell them to say, you owe me X, Y, Z dollars. And this is great for him because he was one man and he's trying to disrupt the energy industry. So if somebody at BP, for instance, decided to start it, they could perfectly go ahead and do that. But when his patent files, he'll be able to recoup whatever profit they made because they took his idea and they ran with it. So it's intended to really protect folks. So that's what I did. I met a lot of people. We did a lot of brainstorm sessions. My office was basically a room with a desk and a chair. I had a view of the city and then just whiteboards. My wall was basically from the floor to the ceiling with whiteboards. I had markers. And all I would do is I'd sit down with myself and the inventor, or myself and some crazy scientist, myself and some crazy engineer, and we would argue about his or her concept and identify ways we could, one, make a business out of it, but two, also protect it. And a lot of my time also was spent studying because I don't know a lot about biology, I don't know a lot about biomechanical systems, so sometimes when the inventor is an expert in biomechanical systems, I need to be able to speak their language. So I'd spend a week or so studying and trying to get on PhD level so that I can then talk to him or her and say, actually, I can read this paper, how is this different from that paper? How is this different from that invention? Okay, cool. So maybe we can modify it this way. Okay. So I did that for about 2 years. It was a great experience, tremendous experience. Learned a lot. But I think I said earlier that law firm life sucks. It sucks tremendously. I don't say that to say that you guys should never become lawyers. Become lawyers if you choose to. But just be mindful that it's not the most glamorous lifestyle. It kind of sucks. Any other questions? What's up?
How did you decide to go, because you made like lots of robots in high school?
Yeah.
How did you decide to go from that to like the managing side?
So that's a good question. So when I went to college, I wanted to become a professor. All my life I wanted to become a professor. Boys, I teach now. I work with kids now. I teach classes in my space now. But more so on operations. And I'll get to that a little bit. But I've always wanted to become a professor. I wanted to get, the suit jackets with the elbow pads, the ascots, the glass, the tortoise frame glasses, and sit like in an office with leather-bound books, and have my leather-bound couch, and have office hours and all that stuff, and have like a green chalkboard behind me. Largely because my dad's a professor, so I wanted to do it. I like that lifestyle, to be able to impact people. So I wanted to, in order to do that, you have to be on a PhD track, and I was going to do that around robotics. And I since then, at that time, I expanded it to nanotech, more specific to nanotech. And that was, even more specific to that, was micro electromechanical systems. And that's where you're creating electromechanical devices or robots on the nanoscale. And the premise behind that was that we would, be able to convert trash into food. That's like the big dream, convert trash into food. I can talk about my thesis or whatever on that a little bit later, but let me answer a question real quick. So the transition though is that in order to do that, you have to be very focused and dedicate a lot of time to a very, very specific thing. So specific that you don't pay attention to anything else around you. I mean, you may be aware of it, but you end up sitting in the silo. And I'm not built for that. Like I'm more so, I lose patience in things. I have a very short attention span. I get things pretty quickly. That's probably like the best thing I'll say about myself. I don't like to brag with it, but I get things pretty quickly. And I get bored with it. Like, oh, okay, I know how this works, okay, I'm done with it. I don't want to spend the next 10 years working on a robotic arm, which is what the trajectory was going to be. No disrespect to my colleagues, they did that and it was great, they're doing great work. But it was just because it was too slow for me. I wanted to transition to something else. And the more I transitioned away from it, I didn't transition too far away, but I experimented slowly, and I started pushing my limits, and that's when I ended up finding a love or passion for starting companies and helping those companies to scale out and expand and managing them. For me, that's more, it's a different kind of engineering. It's like organizational engineering. So I'm still an engineer at heart, but not in a conventional sense. What was your question?
How did you go
For what? Trash or food. All right, so the general principle behind that is in Star Trek. Have you ever seen Star Trek? There's a replicator in Star Trek. Have you seen a replicator? They go up to this machine, they say, I want filet mignon, and filet mignon shows up from. So when I saw that as a kid, I wanted to create that. I also wanted to create a warp drive, and I also wanted to fly. I wanted to do all kinds of things, but these things seemed a bit more realistic. Especially when I read this nanotech book in the public library at middle school. It was about the new age of science and where the world was going to go. We were going to have these devices, you'd be able to inject yourself with some robots and they cure diseases and all stuff like that. So it turns out it's actually much harder to convert trash into something you can eat. It's very hard to do that. It's like breaking things down at an atomic level and changing configuration. But the hope is that we could create some of the fundamental building blocks that will allow you to do that, and that we could change things on an atomic level, or change things at a very small level, and repurpose existing things to something new. I say all that to say that it's not as specific as, it's not the most specific answer, largely because what we ended up finding out is that, like I said, you can't really convert. I should say you can't. Maybe someone will figure this out. But at the time, it's not easy to convert inorganic material to something that's more organic. Or something consumable. Turns out to be pretty bad. What's up?
The concept that this could curb, like the earthly problems we have with waste and everything, and gases, dirty gases, does that concept go through your mind when you're trying to?
Yeah. Yeah, so, right, so it definitely did, and I guess that probably dictates what I'm doing now. So at the time, I thought that as an engineer, I could help solve a lot of those problems, and most of my colleagues, we felt the same way, especially when you go out to, when you meet like some of the more ambitious people you go to school with. Some people have really crazy, lofty goals, and then getting grounded a little bit later on. Some of them continue to chase those crazy things. But the hope is that we could, like, we could get rid of pollution, and we could solve hunger problems. But the deeper we got into it, the more difficult we realized it was. It's not to say that we shouldn't pursue it. But for me, based on my skill set, I wanted to change the way I went about pursuing it. So that's, for me, I thought I could better leverage the resources of other people. People who are much smarter than myself and much more capable, and perhaps convince them, encourage them to join a company or join an organization where we can leverage our resources, pull our resources together, and move at a much faster rate. And that's more or less the trajectory we're on now. Like, so for instance, there's a company in our space that is called Resolve Network, and what they focus on is conflict resolution in the company. So they primarily do this by providing programs and education for women in the Congo. Because what they found is that women in the Congo tend to be the primary decision makers in the family, and that the sort of the violence, the violence and the breakdown of the community that ensues in that particular region is because the woman in the family is not educated, or she is not empowered to make certain decisions. But in order to get them enough money to kind of feel empowered, we utilize microlending or microfinance. So that's more of a technical or financial concept, but we've applied that concept to have a larger systematic effect. And that is a different approach than creating a device that would solve hunger in that area. Instead of creating a device that would turn trash into food for people in Africa or some other region, why not just make it so that the individuals who are there are capable of creating their own stronger infrastructure. And the way that we're doing this is from an organizational standpoint. So we're an engineering organization. In our space, as one of the two people running this space, we have this opportunity to impact a lot of different things. And some of these companies are trying to change the world in a real legitimate way. There's a company called AlleyNYC. What he wants to do is, he wants to turn the entire city into a battery. And his idea, you may have seen like some of his devices around. He has these towers in certain parks where you can plug your phone in, and it's harnessing energy from the sun. It has, he has some units that have wind turbines, and you can plug your phone into it and charge your phone. His idea is then to have enough of these around the city that he'll create a battery network that ultimately his hope would remove people from depending on big energy companies. That instead there'd be this strong battery network around the city that you can plug into at any time, and that electric cars would be connected to this. So for him, he's attempting to solve a big problem as well, which is like energy dependency and also use of fossil fuels and things like that. So for me, I get a chance to work on those things by working with a lot of different companies.
So when you have the space for all these different smaller companies,
Yeah.
what exactly are you providing for them?
Right, it's a good question. So, because I've started a couple companies in the past, and my colleagues have started companies as well, when somebody has an idea or they have a problem they want to solve, oftentimes they don't know how to get started. They don't know how to find a founder, they don't know how to find a mechanical engineer, or a designer, or developer, or a marketer. So we know how to do that. And we've provided a number of resources over the last 10 months to give to them so they can quickly get started. So that's one side. Team formation is one side. The next side is company formation. So we do a lot of work to help them, one, protect their idea if they have a proprietary idea. Like for instance, Greenbelt Energy, they have some proprietary components to their company, to their business model, where they're creating these portable towers that you can move. They actually deployed it when there was, during Sandy, they deployed it at Flatiron. It's compact and it can be expanded. The mechanisms that allow it to do that are potentially proprietary. So we've worked with them to protect that so that they can be competitive in the market. The next thing we then do is help them get funding. A lot of times when you guys start your empires, You decide you want to take over the world, and you decide to you get your team, and you have the idea you want to pursue. You're going to reach that point at some point that in order for you to get to the next level, you need a little bit more money. And it may be money that you don't have yourself. So we have a lot of contacts, we have a lot of relationships with people who have money, or people who are interested in a particular business or interested in affecting the world in a particular way. So a lot of my day is spent hearing ideas that people have, one to bring them into our space and see if we can help them grow. Are we in a position to help them grow? And another part is pitching to our partners and saying that Greenbelt Energy is a member in our space. We should really hear what they're working on. What they're working on may not making money this year, but they're making money in 5 years, but it will also have a significant impact on the city. And I guess the fourth thing that we work on is business development partnerships. So the crux to any sort of, in order to scale, if you have a very strong idea, you want to achieve scalability. The power of one person is only so much. When you have two people, it's not, your power is not multiplied by 2. Oftentimes, depending on how well you work with that person, it can be multiplied by 10 times. And sometimes, so that partner, the connection between the two is a partnership. What we try to do from a business development standpoint is partner companies with other companies in our space or out abroad. And oftentimes when those two companies get together, they expand maybe 10, 20 times faster than they would if they were by themselves. And that partnership could be as simple as, I guess more recent examples like Jay-Z partnering with Samsung or Rock Nation partnering with Samsung. Samsung had this issue where they wanted to see a greater proliferation or greater expansion of their cell phones. They wanted to get more people to buy their cell phones, particularly because they're competing against Apple and iPhone. iPhone is the largest single mobile phone company or mobile phone on the market. Although it doesn't have the most phones, Android has more market share than iPhone. iPhone is a single manufacturer with the most phones. So Samsung is one of the largest manufacturers of electronic products on the planet, but it wants to compete on the mobile side. So from a business development standpoint, somebody had the idea to partner up with somebody who has a large network and would be able to create an organic, who would be able to more organically market their product without seeming like they're pushing a particular product on you. So somebody at Samsung and Rock Nation got together and said, let's actually change the way we're distributing music, and let's change the way we're advertising this new phone, because the first million people who bought the Magna Carta album, you had to have the phone in order to listen to it. It was either on your phone, it was either preloaded on your phone, or it was on the Samsung app or Android app provided by Samsung. So the first million Samsung users people were encouraged to become the first million to get that phone or to upgrade their phones. And Samsung has seen a spike, or AT&T would attest that they've seen a spike in their growth during that time period. People purchased that phone largely because of the Samsung Rock Nation. Rock Nation is Jay-Z, one of Jay-Z's companies. Rock Nation partnership. So the benefit for Jay-Z is that he doesn't have to worry about first week sales. He already has 1 million records sold before his album comes out. So that helps him grow significantly, less effort as a result. And so the folks now touring. That's one side of the business. For Samsung, more products sold off the bat. And it also makes their product look a little bit cooler. Like iPhones are cooler on average. People perceive them to be cooler. Samsung devices tend to be more clunky, not as sexy. But now with that partnership, perhaps some people, I'm just saying what people say. I'm just saying what people say. I would argue my iPhone is sexier than that. Hey, that's just me. But yeah, that's one example of a BD partnership that's done pretty well. So we do that. So BD, venture capital, advisement, some legal support, company formation, and just advice. A lot of times when you start, being that I've been homeless because of a company I started, and that I've been able to grow from that company to where I am now, there are times when people come to you and they say they don't know what's going to happen with the business they're running. They're having issues with their person on the team. They're having issues with an investor. When you give up some of your company to somebody who's investing in you, they want to have a say in what's going on because they put money into your company. It's like your parents telling you that you should do something when you go off to college. If they paid for college, they want you to do a particular thing, even though you want to do something very different. So a lot of times we are just somebody that listens to them and provides them with some of our own personal experiences that hopefully get them back on track and help them reason through the situation they're in. So there's a lot of different things, but that as well. And we also do a lot of events. We have hackathons every weekend. That's basically where you spend about 2 or 3 days with strangers and you build a business or you build a product. The last hackathon we had was with PayPal. You guys know what PayPal is?
Yeah.
So the last hackathon we had was with PayPal. We had about 15 companies come out of that. They started on Saturday morning. These groups formed in person, met strangers, designers and developers got together and built businesses or built products that they then presented on Sunday. The winner got $100 grand to then go out to San Francisco and present their concept to PayPal. Prior to that, we did a hackathon with Spotify. A really cool company came out of that. My favorite one was 2 Chainz does the alphabet, and that's where they have. Does anybody know? You guys know 2 Chainz is, right? 2 Chainz, renowned, prolific rapper, best of an era. I'm totally joking. It's terrible. But 2 Chainz, they created an app on Saturday. He's not terrible.
But he makes money.
Sure. He's not the best. That's a completely different debate, different time. So they basically, because he sounds so funny, they found ways to basically go through the alphabet, and they pulled audio clips for words that he says, like they found instances where he said alpha, or words where he said arrow, and it matched it up with A. And it was a game that they created in a span of like 12 hours. You can go on the site, you'll click A, and 2 Chainz will recite things that start with A. 2 Chainz will recite things that start with B. That was like my most favorite, just because it sounded really funny to hear 2 Chainz say things like that. But the best one would probably be, it was a company called Casio, and they created a platform that leveraged the Spotify API, or Spotify music catalog, to better market nonprofit organizations. So a nonprofit that has like a campaign on Kickstarter would then get a tour connected to it. So if Radiohead is going on tour, they can find a nonprofit and connect their nonprofit to their tour. So some proceeds of the tour would go to this nonprofit. So we have a lot of hackathons, a lot of events. We have a lot of classes. We have a couple of internship programs. We have a lot of high school programs. We do all kinds of things. But the general goal is to spur about entrepreneurship in the city and to make it easier for you to start your business and to be successful.
All right. So I think that's all we got for
Cool.
NC.
Coolio. Thanks, guys.
So let you guys get to work.
So,
So much.
company?
So I do.